Hi everyone, welcome to Scicomm Monday. I'm your host, Nicole Wood. Today we're going to be talking about birds and some fun with some Twitter games, playing around with carcasses. So hopefully you'll all have a good kick out of today. So without further ado, let me get through all the fun intro stuff here. So, like I said, I'm your host, Nicole Wood. Feel free to tweet me at Wildlife Owl Gal or tweet Scicomm Monday at Scicomm Monday if you have any questions after the show. During this show, make sure that you feel totally game for engaging with us. We want to be able to hear all of your questions, so go ahead and fire those in via Periscope. If we can't get to them all, then go ahead and engage with us on Twitter afterwards. So today's guest is Tianna Burke. She's from the Trent University up north in Canada, and she's going to be talking to us about her research with bank swallows. So Tianna, welcome to the Scicomm Monday. It's great to have you on.
Hi everyone. I'm glad to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in birds, a little bit of your academic history so everyone kind of knows where you're coming from.
Sure. So I did my undergrad with restoration ecology. I had no experience with birds at that point, and then I got a position on a co-op term with the Canadian Wildlife Service, where I did a little bit of duck banding. We did a couple bio blitzes in some of our protected areas, and hanging around these people who knew what everything was super interesting to me. And so birds just kind of I picked them up. It was either because they're beautiful, or I used to do music in high school, so maybe they're songs. I'm not really sure. But I loved them. And then I worked for them again, the Wildlife Service in Toronto, where I did some bird banding, and that's really, really where I got hooked. And a position at Trent University came up, working with bank swallows, and I snatched it up, and I've kind of been doing birds, and I've been obsessed with them ever since.
Awesome. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the research with bank swallows? Like, what is the history with bank swallows? What are some of the issues?
Yeah, so in Canada, at least, bank swallows were listed in 2013 as being threatened. And so there's a bunch of reasons. I mean, they have a lot of habitat loss. We don't know too much what's happening on their wintering grounds, but habitat loss in their nesting areas is huge, potentially on stopover sites. A lot to do maybe with insect declines. There's a lot of different factors, but the factors that I was most interested in was nesting habitats. And so one of the biggest declines of their nesting areas is because they are, they nest on banks. And so these banks are on river shores, they're on lakesides, ocean bluffs. And so a lot of these areas obviously are also populated with humans. And so humans don't want their property to erode into the water, and so they put up these structures that basically stop this erosion. But stopping the erosion means that these birds can no longer burrow into these banks, and so they're not able to nest. And so this is quite dramatically reducing their available nesting space. And so at least here, we're looking along Lake Ontario. And then, I don't want to say 100 years ago, but ever since gravel pits have kind of been becoming more needed and being created, the birds have been moving into them and have been basically nesting on tall, vertical, sandy faces that resemble these lakeshore sites, but instead they're inland. And there isn't too much known about them. And so that's kind of where my research questions came in.
Yep, so I've got a picture up here of their natural habitat, so that lakeshore habitat here. So this is where you would commonly see them out along Lake Ontario and the other spots of the Great Lakes is on these big, huge sandy areas next to the lakes like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that was probably our largest site. I think in the States, like one of the largest colonies is along the Sacramento River in California,
Okay.
or at least that's the most popular one where a lot of the bank swallow research has come from.
Wow. Yeah, I think sometimes like we forget like how widespread some of these species are, that you can find them in such a wide variety of places. Like you know, you're doing your research here in Ontario, and you know, here you've got these birds all the way out in California.
Yeah, well, bank swallows are found on every continent in the world except for Australia and Antarctica.
Oh, okay.
And so in the Western Hemisphere, they're called bank swallows, but in the Old World or in Europe, Asia, Africa, they are called sand martins.
Oh, neat. I never knew that. Oh, see, that's what I love about Scicomm Money. You always learn new things. So, so we were just showing their natural habitat. So I'm gonna throw up one of the pictures here that you gave me of their, I believe, is this, you said that this is a burrow check. Is this actually in the gravel pit, or is this out in that natural habitat here?
That one is in the natural habitat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're doing these burrow checks on these hatchlings, like, do you just go and just look in and see what's in there, or do you have to put a camera in there to be able to get all the way in there? Like, how deep are these burrows?
So we started by using boroscopes. What they are is it's actually what plumbers use to kind of put a camera down your sink. But we found with all the sand, it kept basically like the camera wouldn't work. We weren't able to get in there with the sand blocking it. And so we ended up switching to a super fancy method, which was using a mirror on a stick. And so I basically cemented a tiny mirror I cut in a circle onto a metal wire and a flashlight. And we stuck these into the burrows. And that's what my assistant was doing in that photo, was kind of sticking the mirror in with the flashlight. And the burrows can be anywhere. I've seen them nesting in anything from 40 centimeters deep to 110 centimeters deep.
Oh, okay.
So these little 18-gram birds are basically digging a meter into a bank.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. Now, do they bring any nesting material into those burrows, or are they just in the sandy burrow and that's it?
Nope, they build a nest. So the males will dig the burrows, and then the female will choose which burrow it wants to choose. And once it's chosen its nesting burrow, it'll take pieces of grass. Mainly I saw what I've seen was grass, and they would just make a tiny little nest and then put a whole bunch of feathers around it to insulate it.
Nice. So yeah, because it's like, you know, are the bank swallows the only ones that do that, where they burrow into the banks like that? Because we have a bunch of barn swallows around here, and we always see them, you know, making the nest there. Cliff swallows, do they burrow into the nest, or do they actually, or like burrow into a cliff, or do they actually build a nest?
So cliff swallows are mostly, I think, on like rocky cliffs.
Okay.
Or you see them on bridges. So they build mud nests the same way that barn swallows would. But there are rough-winged swallows, and rough-winged swallows will do the same thing that bank swallows do, which is burrow, but they're more solitary. So you'll usually only see one or two pairs of them, whereas bank swallows can be colonies of like hundreds to 1,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of poop science that you have to avoid there.
Oh yeah. My assistant got one of them on her glasses. It was a close call.
Yeah, so I got a picture up here for everyone of the different swallows here in North America. It's an old picture from my really old Peterson field guide here, so everyone can get a little bit of a a look at the different swallow species that there are here, and you can see bank swallows all the way to the left there. And I guess what the most telltale feature of bank swallows would you say is it that, you know, that marking across their breast there, that like barring there?
Yep, so it's the dark back with the contrasting white belly, white neck, and then the thick band right
Oh,
across its breast. Yeah.
is there like any good
Yeah.
way to like tell them like while they're flying in the air like from the other swallows, or you just have to like do your best guess and wait for it to land so you can spot it a little easier?
I mean, they're the smallest swallow in the world, I believe, or at least in North America. They're the smallest swallow. They have more angular wings than the rest of them. So if you can spot that, but their breastbands are pretty easy to see. And so I think it's the best, and as well as their call. They sound fairly unique.
Oh,
So yeah, as long as you hear them, that's my telltale sign that they're around.
okay, great. Um, yeah, I'm gonna have to learn how to bring in some audio and video onto these broadcasts because then we could play the call for them. So maybe when we have you on next time, we can do that and
Yeah,
showcase some of the calls.
yeah, it sounds adorable. I love it.
Yeah, I've done bird surveys. We're part of a big EPA grant at CMU that's doing coastal wetland monitoring, and trying to survey swallows was always so much fun because they'd be flying so fast over our heads, and I'd pretty much just mark unidentified swallow, unidentified swallow. Oh,
Oh, yeah. Well, these guys are so much fun because like we would just sit sometimes and watch them for a couple minutes, and the drama that goes in a colony. It's just you see them like chirping at each other, they make alarm calls, they make all these different sounds, and the more you watch them, the more you kind of understand their language in a way.
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's
I
really
mean,
neat.
yeah, it's the same thing with my the mute swans that I study. It's like you're out there enough, you can kind of tell like just the little hisses and calls and things, and
Yeah.
when you need to slowly back away, or when you can be like, all right, paddling through is okay, we're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. So for everyone out there, just a reminder, if you have any questions for Tianna or myself, feel free to send in those messages, and we'll try to answer your questions as well as we can. If we don't get to everyone's questions, feel free to tweet them in afterwards. I know not everyone is always comfortable with asking questions live on the air, so feel free to tweet them in like the safety of like the Twitter text space afterwards. But I guess some of my other questions, like, so you have these two different habitats. You have the natural lakeshore habitat, and you have like this aggregate or these gravel pits that they're also burrowing in to put their nests. So what's the better habitat, the real natural, or like the fake gravel man-made habitat, and why is one better than the other?
Well, that is the big question. That is basically what my graduate research has focused on, and there's been some pretty interesting results. I mean, the takeaway for a lot of research is that more research has to be done, which I think is one of the biggest takeaways of what I've been finding. There's been so many more questions that I've come up with than I've answered. But I think the most interesting thing we found so far is with our nesting study. I found that our gravel pits were actually the burrows that had young successfully hatch, actually produced more young within that burrow than they did in their natural habitat on the lakeshore. So gravel pits were raising more young per nest than in their natural place. The maybe downside of that was that we also did find that gravel pits had a higher instance of unsuccessful nests. So it was kind of a all or nothing situation. And this is probably due to the fact that in gravel pits, the banks were a lot sandier, and so there were higher instances of collapse. And so a lot more burrows were collapsing, and if the parents couldn't basically dig their young out, then it was just a failed nest completely. And the same goes for predation. If a fox or raccoon got into a burrow, then everyone was eaten or everyone survived because they were out of reach.
Interesting. So, like, do you think with being in those man-made habitats that is it just that there's more food around there that it just happens to be that the bank swallows are feeding on rather than in their natural habitat, that by being there that the they can get more food and that's why the hatchlings are doing so much better in that fake or that gravel habitat?
We actually found that there was less food in the gravel pits. So we did also do a study, kind of a little side study on insect biomass. And we found that there was lower biomass in gravel pits than on the lakeshore, probably because with the lake there's constantly water present. And so there's kind of that constant habitat for insects to breed. Whereas in gravel pits, some of them did have water to breed insects and some of them didn't. But my best guess from this is that it has to do with predators. And so in the gravel pits, we found that the main predators were raccoon, fox, and kestrels. And kestrels were mainly feeding on birds that had fledged or adults who were already flying. But the other two were basically predating anything they could reach as they climbed up the talus, so the sloped part of the bank. They would climb up and try to reach it and dig into it. And so on that picture, it would be a fox. And so it was digging into all of those burrows. And unfortunately, you can kind of see where the talus ends, which is right where the lowest portion of the burrow reaches now. And it just basically dug it out and ate everything.
So you think like just one fox alone could go through and do all of that and take all of those hatchlings?
Yep.
Wow.
Easy. I talked with a couple of the operators and they said they would sit and kind of watch a fox just come in and go through them all.
Wow.
But if the burrows had been a meter higher, so if they had created that face so that the talus was lower, that probably wouldn't have happened. So this is a really easy thing that I think could be managed. But on the lakeshore, we found that there were far more predators for these birds than in the gravel pits. And so in the lakeshore, you still had these like mammalian predators. But we had merlin, we had kestrels, ring-billed gulls were probably the biggest predator I saw, and the one that I was most surprised about. And they would fly up. I think I sent you a photo with all the young at the edge of the burrows. And so at day like 15 through 18, they'll start coming out to the edge of the burrows to beg for food and to get food from their parents. And as they're doing this, the ring-billed gulls will fly up and snatch them right from the burrow's edge.
Oh, wow. That's...
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, is it just like with the, say like the Merlins and the American kestrels that they can get into there? Do they have to really dig out, or they are just small enough that they can get in there and reach the hatchlings where like the fox can go in and has the ability to dig out those burrows?
Yeah, the kestrels and the merlin never really went to an actual burrow. They just basically predated anything that was flying.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So they would sit on top of the colony and wait for a bird to fly out of a burrow and just basically hit it in midair.
Wow. Okay.
Whereas the ring-billed gulls were actually snatching from burrows' edges, and then the mammals were actually digging it out.
Okay. So like the birds, like your birds of prey were preying on the actual adults, where the gulls were just pretty much, hey, there's popcorn right there, I'm gonna go and grab it, and then the foxes are doing the work and going in and getting the young.
Yep, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
And then we didn't have anything on our lake, but on Lake Erie they have fox snakes, and so they've seen many times of fox snakes crawling into the burrows and depredating the eggs and the young.
Wow. Yep. So just a reminder for everyone, if you've got questions, feel free to send those in, and we'll do our best to get those answered. So uh, feel free anything about the bank swallows, Life in Canada by Georgian Bay, which is really, really, really pretty, but it's kind of out there in the middle of nowhere sometimes, it feels like. But yeah, and then so tell us too about because I want to make sure we get it in, and we're getting towards like the last little bit of the broadcast here. So tell us about Name That Carcass, because I'm a big fan of all these Twitter games out there. So talk to us a little bit about that and what inspired that.
Well, I was having a bunch of fun watching all these other Twitter games. I was loving Name That Track and Crow or No, the bird quizzes that go on. And I have a bunch of carcass photos basically on my phone and on my computer from doing taxidermy and doing different dissections when I was helping with a class at Trent. And it just kind of was like, I don't know if other people enjoy this gore, I guess you could call it.
Oh, come on. There's nothing gory about peeling back the skin of a barred owl and showing it off to everyone.
But I don't know. I guess I started doing or showing an interest in taxidermy and dissections after I started hunting. And so while I was hunting and basically skinning animals and taking the meat, I started really getting into the biology of like, what was I cutting? What was I seeing? How can I like learn more about this thing? And then it came into dissections at Trent, and a couple of friends and I started preparing study skins for the collection that we have. And it just got even more cool seeing all these different, like the variations between species, what does a duck have that like a songbird doesn't. And it got really cool. It got really cool. Not many other people have shown an interest in it who I'm close with. They think it's kind of weird.
Come on, I mean, you wouldn't love the tongue of a red-breasted merganser. I mean, that's cool. You don't see things like that all the time.
I think it's awesome. I think it's so cool to see the way that things work. But I mean, I was pretty hesitant to put up a game because I did post something on Facebook once, and a friend reported it to Facebook and it got blocked.
Wow.
And so I was like, whoa, okay, I guess I'm the only person who appreciates this. But then I was really excited when people on Twitter kind of had an interest and really wanted it. And so it was a great way to show my love for dead things, for lack of a better way to put it. And then also kind of learn more myself and also teach others the way that animals work. And I find it really cool.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the difference between having a Facebook community that there might be a few of your scientist pals on there, but a lot more of it is just that general wider audience that doesn't always include all of our science, ecologists that love to go outside and play with things like science poop and, dead things and like poke stuff versus Twitter. It seems to be you have more of like that community of scientists, so they're more likely to be, geeking out about all of that cool stuff, like,
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, here's this body part that like I've never seen before. Let's go figure out what it is.
Yeah, no, totally. Even when we were showing students, like we went to the birds like chest muscles and watching like, okay, if we move the wing like this, look how these muscles move. And we thought it was super awesome. And some of the students were like, this is so cool. Like, I didn't know this was how it works. And others were like, yeah, no. No.
Well, the thing I like about it too is, say, like, when you're putting up the pictures, there's a lot of things that I don't know because my specialty might be one area versus someone else's specialty. And so, like, I have to go out and try to learn it. And so it's a great way for me to not only learn what these different species are, but then you're actually putting up parts of the animal. So I'm getting to learn about their anatomy, and that, like, just takes it to a whole nother level. So it's like I get to play, but also learn at the same time, which I think is such a good thing with all the Twitter games that are out there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've started like I have a track book and I've started bringing that to work. So at lunch on Tuesdays, I can like see which track it is that's been posted. Or Monday nights, my boyfriend sees me with like my biology and like anatomy textbooks kind of laid out to try and like get cool facts about whatever I'll be posting the next day. And it's been a fun learning experience for me.
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing on my Instagram account. Is whatever picture I'm putting up, I try to put like a little like small paragraph summary of what that animal is, or like what that track is, or whatever else it is that's occurring. And I learned so much when I'm doing that, because I'm not an expert on everything out there. So while I'm teaching everyone, I'm still learning while I'm teaching, and it's such a fun thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's so cool.
So a reminder to everyone, we just have a few more minutes left. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send those in, and we'll do our best to get those answered. So we talked about your name that track thing. We talked about all of your bank swallows stuff. Is there any other stuff you kind of want to talk about with our couple minutes that we have here left? Want to talk about Scicomm? Like, what other fun Scicomm things do you like to do that like maybe other folks could take from you? Like, do you do Snapchat or other stuff? I mean, like, what things out there are, like?
What else do I do? I'm big into blogging.
Oh yeah.
I have a blog called Ramblings of a Wildflower. I've been busy writing and editing my thesis, so I haven't gotten to updating it in the last month. But I've been really enjoying posting about the different like citizen science projects that I take part in, and kind of encouraging anyone, I guess, who reads my blog the interesting things that you can learn by doing citizen science projects. And I post about the different birding outings I go on. I'm hoping to do one soon on maybe Twitter games if all the people are interested in writing up a little thing about that.
Yeah, definitely do that. That sounds really interesting, because I think it's such a great way to engage the audience out there, and I would love to see more people talk about that and what has been successful and what hasn't been successful with that, because I always debate about doing it myself, and I just haven't had the time to really commit to full on doing a Twitter game every week. Like, I don't know how Michelle LaRue every week is able to handle the massive amount of people that talk to her on Cougar or not. So like, you really have to like be prepared for that.
Yeah, you really do. I have no idea how they do it. My game is still pretty small. There's still been like quite a few people guessing, and it's been so much fun. But I couldn't imagine the level of participation that she gets.
Right, or something like Mammal March Madness that is starting tonight with a wild card round. I mean, the amount of people tweeting about that and engaging with that, I mean, that's just crazy. But it's so good to see that many people learning. Like, when I was filling in that bracket, there were so many animals I didn't know that I was having to look them all up, to try to like make my decision. And
no, it's so true. And like, these are things that I wish that I had as like a high school student or even as an undergrad, because like I was getting into kind of the more biology side of it, but like it was still kind of, you were labeled as like that weird girl who collects squirrels, or like that like kind of like strange person. But there's a whole community out there who just like loves to nerd out.
Right.
And it's
yeah, like when I went and saw my niece and nephew this weekend, I took over a couple of the Mammal March Madness brackets, and we were filling them out right there, and it was so neat to see my niece, trying to like, she was like rationing in her head like who would win what, and she ended up having a giraffe winning the whole thing because she thought like, well, they fight so well with their heads and necks, and it's really cool to watch that. And so like every animal that came up, she's like, nope, they wouldn't beat that defense. So like, I mean, here you have a 6-year-old who's able to get something out of that game. So it's not even just for like all of us nerdy scientists, you can actually, use these games as a way to help teach and inspire kids. Like, it'd be cool to like get all these kids like engaged with it, because it's so simple to do. Like, you have a picture and say, all right, tell me what that is, do your best guess, and if you get it wrong, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've been finding the same thing since I've been starting writing a blog. I've had someone read about I did a little feature on the rattlesnake research that my boyfriend does, and they drove across Ontario to come visit this park because they found out that rattlesnakes live there. Or I've had a couple people look at the different birding things that I've done, and they've told me that they've started birding in their backyard. They've started doing Project Feeder Watch. They've started getting out more, or seeing the different places in Ontario you can go to see different kinds of birds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to know that you're not that you're inspiring people to get out, but that you're making people interested in the world around them.
Right. Like, I mean, a good instance is today. I thought I saw a possible American kestrel as I was driving back to my hometown, and I was like, okay, I'm getting the binoculars, and we're like running out, and I'm getting the good camera, and we're gonna go see. I wouldn't have necessarily have done that before, but because I've gotten so engaged with the Twitter games and the other scientists through Twitter, everyone's inspired me to go out and just go and like go geek out and go bird out. And so we were out for, I don't know, a half hour, 45 minutes, like chasing down all these different American kestrels that must have been migrating through, because I've never seen them in person, out in the wild. And then to see that many of them all in this one location, it was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But it's because of that community that helps, say, this is cool, go do that and have fun. And now I've got these really great pictures. I learned more about a bird that, I wouldn't have otherwise, because I was reading more about it, while we were out there. And it's like, yes, do this, get involved and have fun and engage with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the more you care about the world around you, the better off the world is.
Yep, I agree 100%. So I realize we are really starting to run over time here.
We do this.
So we'll be nice, and we'll let everyone go. If you have any more questions for Tianna, feel free to get a hold of her at her Twitter handle, which is Tingo_89. If you want to get a hold of me, feel free to either tweet me at Scicomm Monday or at my personal handle, which is Wildlife Biogal. And then just a heads up for next week, we have Lachlan Fetterplace, who goes by the handle of Fish for Brains. He's from the University of Wollongong. I believe I said that right. So it's down in Australia, and he'll be talking about all of his work. He does a lot of beta remote underwater videos on like the soft sediment fish assemblies down in southeastern Australia. So that should be some really cool stuff. So all of you fish folks, definitely tune in. There are some cool videos of sharks that he also gets, so I know there's some shark folks out there that would appreciate that. So with that, we're gonna sign off and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Feel free for sure, make sure that you tweet us if you have any other questions, and then have a great rest of your Monday. Go out, explore, do some science, have some fun, and hopefully we will see you next time.